Hello, and welcome back to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. I'm Cam, and in this video, we will be reading Exodus chapter 3. Moses at the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from a land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? So he said, I will certainly be with you. And this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, Indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Moreover, God said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say to them, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen what is done to you in Egypt, and I have said that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Then they will heed your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall say to him, The Lord God of the Hebrews has met with us, and now, please, let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders which I will do in its midst, and after that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall be, when you go, that you shall not go empty handed, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor, namely, of her who dwells near her house, articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians. So now we're summarizing Exodus chapter 3. Moses was tending to, or keeping his father-in-law's flock, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. An angel of the Lord appeared to him as a flame in a bush that burned without consuming. Moses then went closer to observe the phenomenon. When God saw that Moses' attention was on the bush, God called out to him, and Moses said, Here I am. God tells him not to get closer, to remove his shoes, that he's now standing on holy ground. God tells Moses that he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses hid his face then because he was afraid to look upon God. God tells Moses he sees the affliction of his people in Egypt and heard the cries inflicted from the slave drivers. In verse 8, God tells Moses that he will deliver his people into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. He sees how the Egyptians oppress him. God tells Moses that he'll send him to Pharaoh to get the children of Israel out of Egypt. Moses asks God, "Who am I to be sent to do this?" asking what makes him special enough for this role. God tells Moses that he will be with him, and the token or the symbol is the mountain that they are currently on. Moses was instructed to bring the children of Israel back there to Horeb to worship after they were set free. In verse 13, Moses asks what he should tell the children of Israel that God's name is, to which God responds, "I am that I am." In some versions, it says, "I am who I am." But the King James Version says, "I am that I am." To tell your people that I am hath sent me to you. Tell them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is my name forever, and the name for all generations to use to call upon me. God tells Moses to get the elders of the children of Israel, tell them that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob appeared to him and saw what was done to him in Egypt, that he will bring them out to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. In verse 18, God tells Moses that the elders will listen to him and they will approach the king of Egypt. They will ask that they be allowed to go to the wilderness for 3 days to offer sacrifice to their God. In verse 19, God tells Moses he knows the king of Egypt will not let them go until he is forced to. God says at that time he will then smite Egypt with wonders, or some translations say miracles. Then at last, Pharaoh will let them go. God says that he will give the children of Israel favor with the Egyptians and that they will not leave empty handed. Every Israelite woman should ask, or in the King James Version, it says, every Israelite woman should borrow clothes and jewels from the Egyptians, which are to be used to clothe their sons and daughters. And this action will spoil or strip the Egyptians of their wealth. Some highlights. In chapter 3, verse 1, Moses is, I'm not sure if that's the correct way to say it. It would be an apostrophe after the S, but uh, Moses' father-in-law, the priest of Midian, he's called Jethro in chapter 3, verse 1, but in chapter 2, verse 18, he is called Ruel. But we did see that with the Jacob slash Israel, so it's plausible that he's just called, he has multiple names. Um, in my family, we have that as well, where we all have multiple names. Okay, so verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses physically as a flame in the bush. Once God saw that this got Moses' attention, then he spoke to him, giving Moses instruction. In verse 6, Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And so just want to go over this again. Fear versus afraid. Afraid is filled with terror or apprehension, dread, concern, regret, or having a dislike for. Fear, on the other hand, although it does include the term or include the definition unpleasant anticipation, anxious concern, or reason for alarm, even though those are encompassed in what how to describe the term fear, fear also includes reverence. So, the most popular definition is not the only definition for any term. The definition of a word has to be listed under the term to be used correctly. And synonyms are similar, but not always interchangeable. So, fear and afraid The terms fear and afraid are similar, but not always interchangeable because the definitions of both words are not all the same, which is why they're two different words. So these terms are being examined to underscore that God appreciates reverence or respect for him, as opposed to having a desire to inspire terror. So in Exodus 3, verse 6, Moses hid his face. That is written as an event that happened. This alludes to anxious apprehension, but there was no merit associated with him being afraid. But when we look at Exodus chapter 2, verse 21, the midwives' fear of God was not terror. This was denoting reverence or respect for God, having a concern for God's desires. This was met with a positive merit, and the midwives were blessed. So that fear was merited differently. Moses being afraid, there was no merit associated with it. It was just an event that happened. The name of the name of Moses' people, I'm just going to say Moses, even though I think it's correct to say Moses's, but it's the name of Moses' people. In verse 7 through 12, God tells Moses he's seen how the Egyptians are treated. His or my people, uh, that's how these enslaved people are referred to in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. In chapter 9, verse 13, the people of Israel. Oh, I'm sorry. In chapter 3, verse 9 and verse 13, the term used to refer to this group of enslaved people are the people of Israel. And then in chapter 3, verse 10 and verse 11, the term referring to this group of enslaved people are the children of Israel. So, my people, people of Israel, children of Israel. The next highlight is God's name. In verse 6, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In verse 13, his name is I am who I am. And in verse 18, his name is God of the Hebrews. That is the end of the highlights that I have for Exodus chapter 3. And the next upload will be Exodus chapter 4.